Hello and welcome. I am Scrapperlock, and this is City of Heroes. We are with Dr. Cyclone. We are almost level 21. We will definitely hit that here. And today we are talking about role-playing games as we play, and we're going to talk about tabletop role-playing games, and we're going to talk about sandboxes. We're going to talk about um, railroad sandboxes, but also I want to talk about something called fronts, which is a really cool sandbox tool that I personally had never heard of before. This comes by way of, I think, Dungeon World, not a game system that I have any interest in per se, but I think it has some interesting tools. I know that Trevor Duvall in Me, Myself, and Die use the Perilous Wilds supplement for Dungeon World to generate random dungeons, and that actually seemed to work pretty well for him. I actually have that. I don't have Dungeon World itself, but I do have the Perilous Wilds, and it's kind of cool. I feel like other dungeon generators that I've seen are preferable to me. Um, but one of the ideas of Dungeon World is supposed to be to kind of make things rules light and not. Oh, it's sort of based on Apocalypse World and stuff, Iron Sworn type game. But the idea is not to have too many rules and too much sort of technicality to the game, and try to make it a little more, say, shall we say, abstract? What is this? Oh! I don't need to fight anybody because I can turn on an Arachnos disguise. Here we go. I don't know if this. I'm going to wait for this thing to fade because I don't know if it's going to draw aggro if I run into it, if it's going to like lightning bolt. Anyway, I don't remember where I saw this, but somebody was talking about the concept of having a sandbox world and how in a sandbox world needs to feel like a living world, right? So let's define some terms, right? A sandbox campaign is a campaign where you create a region or an area, and instead of having a predefined story, right? Like what we're doing now, this story arc for this Psychochronometron is a predefined story that starts with Jim Tembler. He gives us a number of quests. We learn the story that was written by the developers. Then we go to Penelope Yin. Then we go to Dr. Lila. Each one is giving us about a quarter of the story of Faultline, which is a region, but also a villain or a hero. It's both, right? And it turns out that there's a time travel thing, and this guy using time travel, the evil villain, using the power of the Psychochronometron, goes back in the past and kind of messes up the history of the character Faultline, who was a superhero, and turns him into a supervillain by messing up the past, right? And so that's the kind of the storyline that was written by the developers. And what we're doing as we play through this story arc is we are unlocking the story and learning about it, right? And we don't really, in a game like this, since it's a computer game, I hear it glowy, you don't really have the ability to alter the story or affect the outcome. But in a tabletop role-playing game, usually you do. Something like a plot point campaign from Pinnacle is this way. The players are free to do what they want, but then as they hit certain checkpoints, they trigger certain parts of the plot, and the next encounter happens, and they can choose to fight or not fight, and so on and so forth. And so you have these, you have that kind of a game. Most of the games that are published in modules are story modules that are designed with a predetermined plot, and then the idea is that we're gonna come back to this room. I hate this room. I'll pin it. We might have to come back to it, but let's just try to avoid it. I hate that room. Can't see anything. It's completely dark. Where are we going? Let's go this way. There's gonna be an elevator somewhere over here. Yeah, and we'll just keep going down. If we have to, we'll come back. A sandbox campaign, the idea is you create a map, you create some points of interest around the map, you allow the players to have some idea of what the points of interest are, and they decide where they want to go and what they want to investigate. And as they're crawling around the map, they might find new points of interest that they didn't even know about, and they might be interested in those. And so the players, um, kind of the players decide the goal rather than the GM, and the players decide what the adventure is going to be by choosing like where to go and which point of interest to follow along with and that sort of thing. And so, but the problem with the sandbox campaign is sandbox campaigns can sort of end up being aimless. And so what this one GM recommended was this thing from Dungeon World called fronts. And I'm not sure exactly how to define a front, because a front is kind of this abstract thing where it's based on the idea of if there's multiple fronts fighting on two fronts in a war, right? Or the idea that you have different theater of operations and that there are different forces acting in the different theaters of operations. So in World War II, the Pacific Theater of Operations had Japan, Britain, the United States, China, right? But Germany and Italy weren't involved, whereas the African theater of operations had mostly Britain, the United States, some of the African nations, Germany and Italy, right? And then on the Eastern Front, you had Germany and Russia, and maybe Finland was getting involved, and Poland was getting involved, and some of the countries over there, right? And so you have different, shall we say, stakeholders in each quote unquote front. And so the idea is you come up with one or more fronts. This would be something like a front from the Lord of the Rings would be the One Ring is a front, right? And then there are going to be what in the rulebook are called dangers, but I think of as factions. Each faction is wanting to do something relative to the ring. You have the Rivendell faction, which wants to destroy the ring. You have the Mordor faction, which wants to find the ring. You have the Orthanc faction that's trying to find the ring, and so on and so forth. And then you have Gollum, right? So these are the different factions or dangers or stakeholders that are involved in the One Ring front, right? And then each of these stakeholders is going to have what's called an impulse, which I call a goal, or an aim, right? What's Gollum's aim? To possess the precious. What's the Rivendell faction's aim? To destroy the ring. What's Sauron's faction's aim? To cover all the world in another darkness, right? So that's kind of their goal, to conquer the world, etc. Then let's use this. Maybe we can ignore some of the fighting down here by using this thing. Right? Like he didn't attack me. Then you have the doom of each danger or each faction. I don't have another name for this. So the doom of the faction is basically what's going to happen if this faction actually wins. So in Sauron's case, he covers all the world in a second darkness. In Saruman's case, he becomes the new Sauron, right? In the Rivendell faction's case, the ring gets destroyed and Mordor is disintegrated, right? So what's the outcome of the faction meeting its goals? That's the doom. And then finally you have what he calls portents of what grim portents, which I don't think is a good name. But these are what I call the checkpoints. These are the steps that the faction is going to take to achieve its end, right? Find out where the ring is, find the hobbit, get the hobbit to Mordor, torture the hobbit, take the ring, put it on my finger, right? So you have 5, 6, 7 checkpoints. To-do list, right? And so in the game, I believe there is kind of a, shall we say, a mini game for GM similar to the faction mini game that you have in, say, Worlds Without Number or Stars Without Number, where the GM in between play sessions is basically running a solo mini game of faction against faction and that kind of thing. Now that I have no real interest in. But what got me interested in fronts is the one GM said what he does for sandbox games is he creates a couple of fronts. Each of them have a few what I will call factions, right? The factions have goals and dooms. And then he creates this checklist, this list of checkpoints, the task list for the faction. And then what he does is if the players go on an adventure against faction A, after the adventure is over, he advances the checkpoints of factions B and C and D by one, right? And then the players may hear some of these grim portents. Oh, I heard a hobbit got kidnapped from the Shire, etc., etc. Um, and they don't know what happened to him, and apparently his ring was taken, right, or what have you. And so the this sounds like a really cool idea to me. And so if you want to run a sandbox, I recommend doing this, right? I don't even know if you need fronts per se, but what you can have is for each faction have what their aim is, what the outcome will be if they succeed at their goals, and then a series of, I would say, 5 to 7 or 8 steps. I wouldn't do fewer than 5 because I think it would happen too fast. I think in the game they're all supposed to be. They're all supposed to be around 6, but I would vary it so that they don't all come. My fear is if the players focus on one faction and ignore the other factions. Yes, okay, the other factions advance and they might achieve their goals, but I think it's going to be a mess for the GM if 3 factions all achieve their goals at the same time. Right? I mean, if you want to do that, go for it, but I would rather have one faction has 5 steps, one has 6, one has 7, one has 8, and if the players stop one of the factions, then when one of them achieves its goal, the others are still a couple of steps away from their goal. So it doesn't all happen at once. I feel like that's kind of unrealistic. Who do we have in here? I don't see anybody else. Up here? There. Okay. Oh, yeah, we gotta have a boss, of course. That makes sense. And we want to be grounded. Oh, you got a little minion with you. Well, the boss is more dangerous than the minion, so we'll work on the boss first. We'll just make sure that we penetrate. So yeah, I would say make up a set of factions. Come up with an aim for each faction. A doom, right? What is the consequence if the faction achieves its aim and finishes its checklist? And then a checklist of 5 to 8 things. And I would make a different number for each faction. And if it's me as a GM, I'm probably going to see if, again, you would want to think in character, what are the obvious steps? But if it were me, I would give the most dangerous faction with the worst consequence for it winning the longest number of steps, the greatest number of steps, to give the players a little bit of leeway in figuring out we got to stop this faction and going and doing it, right? If you make that one really short, then the really bad doom happens right away if they don't go after it. But I love this idea because I think it'll make the world feel dynamic and realistic, right? And it also means that the players have choices that have consequences. If you choose to go fight faction A, then you might be leaving faction B the time to advance their plot. Matt Colville said years ago that he typically starts his players, and I'm going to probably mess up which modules he uses, but he typically starts his players out with clues to 3 different adventures that are taken from modules. One of them, I'm pretty sure, is against the cult of the reptile gods. I can't swear to the others, but let's just pretend one is the cult of the reptile gods, one is the village of Hamlet, and one is a keep on the borderlands, right? And those are the 3 things within several days' journey, I don't know, a week's journey of the player's starting town, and each one of the PCs comes to the table with rumors about one of these. So maybe somebody's cousin is in the town that's being attacked by the cult of the reptile god, and somebody's brother-in-law works for the head of the keep on the borderlands, and somebody's son vanished in search of the unknown, right? And so each of the PCs has some reason to go to one of these places, and they have to make a decision. You can't go to all three at the same time. And what he does is, um, if the players choose, say, the Keep on the Borderlands, then the town being attacked by the Cult of the Reptile Gods might fall. And the people in that town, when you go to try to save it, might be already cultists and like zombies and taken over by the cult, right? And so um, this is the same kind of idea, just probably a little bit simplified, right? Because Matt Colville would have to like read through the module and figure out what's going to happen. Here, instead, you just take a general set of steps for the faction, and you just figure it out that way. And I think that's something that I would probably. I thought I saw word balloon back there. I would probably like doing with my players. I don't know if they're going to want to do it. Like, I don't know if they want to do a sandbox or not. But if I ran Shadow Dark, I think that's what I would do, right? I would start out with a funnel, or gauntlet, whatever you want to call it, where they find out who their PCs are. And then once the funnel is over, then I will have a few adventure areas that are there'll be rumors and stuff like this, and the players can decide where do they want to go. Right. One of the things I really like is Professor Dungeon Master said he uses the Keep on the Borderlands as his base, and he said that one of the things he does is in the tavern in the Keep, there's this large wooden table that's been carved on by adventurers for time out of mind, right? For decades, they carve the map, and they slowly have been adding to the map over time as they find dangers and adventure areas and stuff like that. And I think that sounds like a cool idea too. I've also been toying with the idea of Village of Hamlet. I do own that. I bought the PDF of it, and it's a cool village with good NPCs and stuff. And then you have the Moat House, which is just an adventure area. And then I think if you just can put a few other adventure areas in and around the area where the Moat House is, you have a cool starting location, right? And then maybe some distance away, there are other adventure areas, like there's a Borderlands with a keep over there, and there's a Cult of the Reptile Gods over there, what have you. Now, I don't know exactly which modules I would do. Maybe Village of Hamlet? I don't really know. I wouldn't call it Hamlet. I would probably give it a different name, and that sort of thing. But yeah, I think this is a really cool way to do it. And then obviously, what I would do is I would have factions from within the Moat House or the Village of Hamlet, factions from the Caves of Chaos or wherever, factions from the Cult of the Reptile Gods that have portents, the checkpoints. And as they're doing one adventure, the checkpoints of the other factions are slowly being filled. And rather than doing a mini game, I really like the idea that this one GM had of saying that we're just going. He just advances the plot one step, right? There's no like rolling dice, mini games, checking to see which faction is up and which faction is down. He doesn't do any of that. He's just like, okay, you are fighting the Cult of the Reptile God. That means the Caves of Chaos and the Moat House factions are both going to advance one checkpoint because nobody's stopping them. And I feel like it adds a sense of consequence, a sense of agency, a sense of urgency, and a sense of realism to a world to do that. So I really like this idea. And it's something, I think, even if I do like a horror game, say a Lovecraftian one, which is what I'm kind of hoping and planning to do, if we do horror, I probably will do the same thing, right? I will have the Innsmouth faction of people who are trying to like get in the good graces of the Dark Ones and summon Dagon, and then maybe there will be a Nyarlathotep faction, and maybe there'll be a Yog-Sothoth faction or a Cthulhu faction or whatever, and each of them will have, a plot to summon or appease or whatever the dark evil god that they worship. And if the players are in Innsmouth working against the Dark Ones, it may be that the Cthulhu faction is rising in Kingsport and starting to get victims to do their ritual and raise Cthulhu from the depths or something like that. So I really like this idea that you can just advance that, create the checklist and just advance it until, things come to a head. I think that's really a cool idea. So I just wanted to present that as an option since I had not heard of fronts before, and I like the basic concept of it. And I feel like with the tweak of just advance everything one step that hasn't been fought this adventure, and you don't have to do a timeline, right? It's not like every week or every month. You don't do that. You just once the adventure is over, you just go and advance the other checkpoints by one, and then if you feel like it's necessary to have a town crier announce some news or for it to appear in the newspaper or on television or what have you, then you have that happen. And I think even in Champions you could use this, right? They fought the Overlords. Well, that gives the Devastators a chance to advance their plot. And they come back from the adventure against the Overlords and they hear breaking news: 3 banks were hit over the last week by the Devastators, and bank insurance has gone up, and people are withdrawing their money, and they're concerned about a run on the banks and possibly a new Great Depression, right? And the players are like, well, crap, we were fighting Overlord and stopping him from like absorbing the energy of everybody in Long Island to become a demigod. And that worked, but all the banks in Manhattan are now out of money, and the ATMs don't work because we didn't stop the Devastators from robbing the bank. And I really like this idea. And I mean, I've been kind of informally doing things like, well, the players didn't do anything against this faction, so I'll have them do something. And I always did this in Champions. Okay, well, they haven't fought these villains for a while, so I'll put a news story out about how these villains just attacked, somebody in another state. But it was always just very sort of catch as catch can, right? Just very spur of the moment impulse. I'll just add this to the intro to this scenario, and I like the idea of being more systematic about it and having goals and end game and checkpoints to getting to that end game that I can then use with the players. So I just wanted to bring this up so that you guys, if anybody's interested, it's a technique. It's another tool in our arsenal, another arrow in the quiver. You can never have too many of those as a game master. So I just wanted to mention that, and hopefully that'll be useful for a few of you at least. It certainly, I think it will be useful for me. Now, bringing up Sandbox brings up the video that Bob Worldbuilder made. But before I get to that, guys, I do want to mention one thing. Luke Hart has posted a video. It's really interesting because I saw it on April 1st announced, and that it would be coming out in a few days, and I thought it was an April Fool's joke, basically saying, I quit, I'm done. Where am I going? But in fact, I think he's going to still be doing shorts, but he's done with long form videos, I guess, about D&D and role-playing games on his channel. And he explained that it's because, thanks to, I guess, the algorithm and just the way things work, his channel has been getting fewer and fewer views as time has gone on. And I don't know, can we just run through here? Yeah, I have no interest in really fighting the Arachnos in their Arachnos bases. So he's been having a harder and harder time getting views and subscribers and stuff, and so his channel is much like Guy from the Great GM. His channel is slowly decaying, and instead of trying to figure out how to stop it, he's just said, "Nope, this is what happens to YouTube channels. I'll just accept it." And so he's going to continue to put out shorts, I think, but his long form, Q&As and long form videos are. He's going to leave up the ones that are there, but he's, I guess, done for now. And that's a shame and sad, and I'm sad to see his channel go. He's a good content creator and gives great advice to GMs, and it's always sad to see a fellow creator giving up. Now, I can understand that it can be very frustrating when you're trying to grow a channel and get money from the channel and stuff, and it's not working. But I don't have that issue because I just do this as a fun little hobby, and even if nobody watches, I enjoy making these videos and talking to you guys. And if there's nobody listening, I can talk to myself. That's okay. And that's that. And these guys are all level 20s. I don't use those, so we'll just get rid of them. And now we'll continue with ambushing Nocturne. Okay, this is going to be tough with this character. Wait. We got to level up. Anyway, back to Bob Worldbuilder, who is still making videos. He made a video about Sandbox. It says Sandbox versus Railroad isn't the real difference. And so what he argues, I hate these names. What he argues is that the real difference between campaigns is event-based versus location-based campaigns or adventures. So what he argues is he calls them event-based. The D&D book calls them event-based. Maybe this is where he gets it from, or maybe they got it from somewhere else. I don't know. I always misinterpreted what event-based meant until I really sat down and read it. Event-based, we're doing an event-based campaign right now. Event-based campaigns are quest-based or mission-based, right? You get a mission and you go do the mission. Any game where you have like a mentor who's giving tasks to the PCs is an event-based game. A lot of computer games are event-based games. Anything that's trying to be cinematic is almost certainly an event-based campaign. It is quest-based, right? So the story is created by the GM, and the players essentially are unlocking the story. Most Savage Worlds plot point campaigns are this way. Each plot point is an event. In between the events, the players can do what they want, but then when they trigger the next plot point, they get to the next event, the next quest, or the next mission, or whatever it happens to be. Okay. We're coming up on level 22. I need everything. But I think... Gosh, do we even need stuff in here? Yes, we're going to even need resistance slots in there. This is really a slot hogging. I need it in everything. Let's keep... Well, alright, let's give ourselves a little bit more here, and we'll throw one on there. I don't know. I don't know what to do first. I need it all. So, event-based is like COH, right? It's quest-based, mission-based. You're doing things... You may go to... This is why I don't like location versus event. You may go to various locations. We're doing this now, right? We're going to an Arachnos base or whatever. We're going to ambush Nocturne in a particular location. But... an event-based game is where you get the quest first, and then you may or may not go someplace, right? And you're doing the mission steps to complete the quest. That's what a story arc is, right? So it's this kind of thing. A location-based campaign is one where the PCs explore one or more places, locations, with no particular game master imposed goal. There isn't a wizard mentor or somebody to tell them, go here and do this. Instead, what they hear is, well, in the west, there's a town being plagued by a cult of reptile worshippers. In the north, there's a keep on a borderland where there's a cave of chaos nearby that's harassing the town. And in the east, there's this village with a moat house, and there are some bandits in the moat house. Where would you like to go? There's no particular quest associated with any of these spots, at least not initially. The players are just deciding what to do and where to go. And a lot of times they're done as a hex crawl, where you start in a town and maybe you're going somewhere, but each hex you enter has some potentially interesting thing in it. And as you travel, you might be like, there's some mountains over there, and you see, make a notice roll. You make the notice roll. Okay, you see, there looks like there's a cave up in those mountains. And the players might say, well, let's go explore. Caves are usually interesting. Let's go explore a cave. And they might find this thing that goes down 10 levels and is a huge mega dungeon. And they're just exploring it because, hey, let's get some treasure, let's get some gold, let's get some XP, let's adventure, right? They're not saying something like, let's go here to get the third sword that we need of the 4 swords to defeat the evil sorcerer. Because that would be an event-based game. So, in a location-based game, you're basically just going to locations that seem interesting and finding out what happens when you get there, right? So what Bob Worldbuilder says is that he likes to call this plot-based versus setting-based, right? That is there a plot that you're working on, or is there a setting that you're exploring? Also, he said you could think of this as destination-based or journey-based, right? Are you interested in the end goal or the journey to get there? And so sandbox games are more location based or setting based or journey focused. And um, railroads or plot point games are quest based or plot based or event based. Um, I have to say the majority of the adventures that I've done over the years have probably been what are called event based. I didn't realize this when I was reading about event based games in the Dungeon Master's Guide. At first, I was like, because one of the examples they give is like murder mysteries, and I generally haven't run those. Although you do a little of that in Champions, but yeah, Champions is completely event based. Nobody's exploring the setting in Champions because usually the setting is modern Earth, right? And downtown Chicago or something. Like there's nothing to explore. Not that Chicago isn't a nice town, but there's like role playing game wise, there isn't anything to explore. Right? We all kind of already know what Chicago was like, and um, the the PCs are not adventurers exploring the modern world. They are trying to stop villains from robbing banks or blowing up bridges or taking hostages or whatever. So literally every Champions campaign I've ever run has been event based 100%. There's no going to location first. Let's go to New York and see if there are some villains there. Like nobody does that in Champions, right? You go to New York in the Quinjet because you heard that Doctor Doom is building a Doom machine on top of the Empire State Building. That's an event based. It's happening at a location, but that's essentially a quest based game. Um, Even when my best friend and I were playing games like the Keep on the Border, other than the Keep on the Borderlands, where first basically we just went to the Caves of Chaos and went in there because we're adventurers and this is D&D and we want to learn how to play the game. But most of the time, even in our old school D&D games, we always had a reason to go to the location. We very rarely played a game where we just found out that there were locations and went there because there was something there. I guess we did sometimes for one-offs and stuff, but a lot of times, almost all the time in Rollmaster, definitely in Champions, and many times in D&D, we did the plot-based stuff, the quest-based. And so, yeah, I think it sounds cool to do location-based, to do more sandboxy stuff. I love the idea. But I have to say, I'm interested in how I'll run it. Because I haven't actually done that very much in recent memory. I don't know if I'm going to be able to beat this girl. We'll see. I have some psionic defenses. But yeah. She's kicking my butt. Maybe I don't have the right inspirations. I'm going to have to get rid of this Arachnobot because he's messing me up too. Oh, and the problem is because of the psi slows you down too. So she's gonna mess up my recharge rates. So, this guy's cool. I like range, but I have to say, not a huge fan of kiting. I just don't like doing it. I'd rather stand in there and fight. That's one of the reasons why I always gravitate toward brutes and stalkers and tanks and scrappers and stuff. Because this whole business of, like, if she would stand there and shoot at me, I wouldn't care. But this whole business of her constantly running up to me to stab at me and I have to keep running away from her, it's just not, to me, a fun way to play. Not a fan. And she's completely resistant to knockdown, so I can't knock her down and stop her from attacking me like that. I don't think I'm going to be able to beat her. I don't know. She's a pretty tough elite boss for this level character. And I have no way to heal now, so she's going to kill me, I think. And I can't knock her down. Yeah, she's got me. Yeah. Alright, back to the hospital. I'll bring you guys back when we're ready to fight her again. Alright, we're back. I loaded up on Lux so that hopefully she won't hit me as badly. Problem is we have no real defense. We only have resistance, so the Lux only going to get me up so far, but we need to not be hit because she's slowing me down and everything, so she's right there too. And we'll just get started on her. Fortunately, she didn't completely heal. I don't know if she has knockback. Might be worth hovering to see if I can get her not to hit me. Yeah, that might actually work. She can still psi me, but it's her melee attacks that do the most damage. And I'm not doing enough damage for sure. Yeah, this is just going to be whittling her away. So anyway, guys, let me know, like, if you're playing a role-playing game, if you're a player, what do you prefer? Do you prefer to have a really well-defined campaign where you have stories and plots where your characters are given quests and stuff? I was even thinking about this. I could use the sci-fi companion, and I really like the premise of XCOM, but I was thinking, how would I run it? Because XCOM is all like, okay, Commander, here is what your troops have to do this mission. I don't know if my players would like to have that level of railroading, because it is kind of railroading. It is railroading. So I know they want a strong story, but that might be too strong, you know? So, yeah, what do you guys prefer? Do you prefer to have a really strong story, quest-based, plot-based game, or do you prefer to sort of wander around and do the sandboxing? And does it differ whether you're the player or the GM? Right? Is it like you like running Sandbox as GM, but you want plot point as a player, or vice versa? So let me know. I'll be interested to hear what people think. How are we doing on time? 39 minutes. All right, we'll do one more mission and then we will stop. Oh, this stuff. Yeah, I would definitely like to try running a sandbox. I don't know. I feel like my best friend kind of nixed it the first time I suggested it. He said he wanted a really strong story. It was really kind of funny because he wanted a really strong story of the world that they were going to participate in, and I did that with the Rome game. And then he acted frustrated that I wasn't doing enough stuff with like the character backgrounds and everything. Like, you're the one who asked for a really strong world story, and I'm just trying to run that. And if we get too into the character backgrounds, then we're not running the pre-existing, predetermined story of the world that he kind of wanted. Right? We talked about, do you want to kind of discover, like, I can make a world that where I discover what the plot is along with you guys, and he said, no, 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 you should be determining a story ahead of time, and that's what he thought would be the most fun. Now, I don't know if he still thinks that. He's played a bunch of D&D adventures since, and it may be that he was really thinking along the lines more of Champions, right, where you do have, it's event-based, it's story-based, so you don't have this sort of sandboxy stuff. But yeah, one of my original ideas was to use, what do they call it, a Points of Light campaign. The Nentir Vale from 4th edition is an example of that. I'm sorry, guys, I keep forgetting to zoom in with this character. For some reason, I remembered it better with my melee character. And so what I said was, rather than me predefining a world, you guys tell me what you want to make up. Like, if you're going to make up, say, an elf, a dwarf, a halfling, and a human, then I'll make up like a valley. And then the mountains, the forests, and the river around there, the hills around there will have an elf town, a dwarf town, a halfling town for you to come from, right? And I'll build the lore of the world around the characters that you want to play. And my best friend said, no, you should have a world that already exists independent of our characters, and we just create characters to participate in it. And that's where Rome came from. I said, well, okay, then maybe you'd like this other idea, which is the Rome game. And they said, yes, we prefer that. So, or he said he preferred that, and I think the other players were kind of agnostic about it, right? And so, since he had a very strong preference, that's what we went with. But I think this time, if I ran fantasy, I would say I want to run a true sandbox. Right, I want to go with the Shadow Dark aesthetic, which is to run a sandbox, to not have a bunch of predetermined stories, to not have a bunch of predetermined characters. He still knelt down. I so hate Raider Engineers. Like, hate Raider Engineers. And their stupid generators. So yeah, I don't know what he's going to want, but you guys let me know, what do you like, right? Not that you're going to be in my campaigns or anything, but yeah, let me know what you find the most fun. It'll be interesting to see what my audience says. Why does it take so many blows to take out this stupid generator? Oh, because I'm missing constantly. I hate that this generator is harder to take out than a boss. It's so annoying. Yeah, I really do. Not that I necessarily want my Deadlands game to come to an end quickly. Where's the guy that ran away? Where did he go? Did he go up here? I don't know. I'm just going to leave him. Is it defeat all? No. So who cares? Not that I want my Deadlands game to end quickly. I'm having fun with it, and it's a cool campaign. But I am kind of, I'm very curious as to what people are going to say when the campaign is over and I make my offer of what possible future games we could do. I'm very curious as to what the preferences are going to be and what people are going to say. right? I have some predictions of who's going to say what, but I'm really very curious of what's actually going to happen and who's going to say they want what versus what other people are going to say. I'm also wondering if it is going to be the case that one or more of the players are going to say none of these ideas sound appealing to me. In which case, I'm probably going to have to say, well, and I guess somebody else needs to GM because these are the things that interest me. Right? And as a GM, I do want to please my players, but I also have to enjoy what I'm running. And so, if these things are what will enjoy me, then that's something the players are going to have to live with. And, you know, the worst part is, the worst condition is when the thing that the players would enjoy is something I wouldn't want to run, and the thing that I would enjoy running is something the players don't want to play in. And then we really are at an impasse, and I hope that doesn't happen. It might trigger somebody to actually run something. So, now we're looking for Captain Castillo. Oh man, yeah, I hope I get a bunch more inspirations or I will probably lose to him. You know, this is like the third time I clicked Hailstones and then clicked another power, clicked the lightning power, and only the lightning power went off. I don't know what I'm doing wrong here. Did I not click it? Yeah, it's clicking. I don't know. I love how when I need inspirations, none of them drop. Of course I missed him, so now he's going to summon his annoyance bot. Yeah, this character really needs to get to 22. We need these SOs. He's really struggling without them. And at 22, I need another attack power. There's just, like, I can't keep taking defense powers. I've got to take something to attack with. Because we need another power in our attack chain. It's just so anemic right now. And I feel like far more anemic than my Scrappers and Stalkers have been. And I think it's because of this Storm Cell, which eventually will be really cool. But right now it's, you know, it did lightning for me just there, but it just doesn't do enough. It's taking up a whole power slot and it's not doing enough to replace a big attack power. Although I couldn't run a big attack power right now anyway because I don't have enough endurance. So it would just be draining me of endurance even more. So my guess is I'm going to have to pause this video and run out to get more inspirations to fight Castillo. I'm just ignoring this guy and trying to see, is there a Raider engineer yet? Yeah, but SOs can't get here soon enough. Level 20 and 21 are always painful without SOs, you know, because you don't have SOs. Then once you get to 22, everything gets better. And that should happen with this character as well. Hopefully we'll also get another attack. And there's Captain Castillo. He's probably going to kill me, but we'll try. I may as well try him rather than let's let him aggro to the clocks. Just making sure that wasn't a Raider engineer there. He's got his own little bot, but I don't want a Raider engineer throwing another one in. Oh, the endurance is just killing me. Do the hover trick again? No, he can fly. Okay. We won't bother with that then. We'll stay grounded. I'm guessing he's going to kill me. Because I didn't come in here with enough inspirations. A statesman used to say you need a full tray of the right inspirations, and I am now out of endurance. So I may as well. Well, go ahead and kill me. Because it'll take longer for me to leave than to just have him kill me. I gotta go to the hospital anyway to get more inspiration, so we'll just let him kill me. Yeah. Alright, back to the hospital. And I'll let you guys come back when I'm ready to fight him again. Alright, we're about back. There's Castillo, and he's fully healed. Just great. Again, triple defense, because it seems to be the only way to survive until we get our SOs in and stuff. I have to say, I think it should be pretty clear, this character does not solo anywhere near as well as the Stalker. So, I don't know if the person who said Stalkers aren't great thought Sentinels were better at soloing than Stalkers, but NFW, guys. Not even close. Now, part of the problem may be the power sets, right? Because the defense set we have here requires multiple powers for Mez defense, which means I had no choice but to take those extra powers, which is one of the reasons we have anemic attack right now, because I had to take grounded in order not to be constantly being knocked back by this guy and other guys. So that's a problem, and that's partly designed by the power set rather than by the AT. But at least for my playstyle, the Stalker is infinitely better to solo. This guy, I would say, right now is barely soloing as well as my Defender. Or, what was it, a Defender? Dominator. No, the Dominator was better, I think. And a Plant Thorn Dominator would have been infinitely better. Because they have really good AoE mez and stuff. Yeah, I feel like the Dark Defender's mez was dramatically inferior to the Plant Thorn Dominator. The Plant Thorn Dominator's mezes. Okay, so we took out Castillo, and now we have to find his... I hear a glowy. We have to find his plans. Where is it? Where the heck is it? Oh, it's up there. Where the heck? The heck? How is it up there? Oh. Now, you know, some of this may be the power sets. But, I mean, I don't think there's any contest. This guy has already died way more than the Stalker did. He's much slower. He can't just stand in there and take it. And the only similarity is I think they both sucked endurance at this point. But yeah, so far up to level 20, there's no contest. The Stalker is infinitely easier to solo. I mean, just think how much of this stuff I could have stalked, and also Castillo, Assassin Strike. Right? I'm getting shot at here by some crap, right? This Stalker wouldn't be. Now, some of it I did to myself, right? Flight makes everything slower than super jump. So it does seem slower in part because of that. But yeah, go back and watch the first 20 levels of the Stalker compared to the first 20 levels of this. I don't think there's any contest. The Stalker solo is way easier. This with the same player, playing the same style. And maybe that's on me. Maybe I should be playing with a slightly different style. Maybe I should be trying to hover more. I don't find this where you're shooting down at enemies. I don't find that pleasurable to look at. Also, I got to be on the ground for grounded. So again, maybe that's on me. Those are the power sets I chose. But for my money, if you're trying to say like who's going to be more fun and easier to solo, Stalker, 100%, no contest. Order of magnitude better, easier, more fun, more intuitive to play. I think that's not what I want. I want the store, all of it. Like I just there's no contest in my opinion. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll keep that. We'll grab 3 Lux, a couple of Endurance, and 1 of each of these. Alright guys, I think we're going to stop there. I hope you've enjoyed. Until next time, I am Scrapperlock, and this has been City of Heroes.